So I just want to put up a little disclaimer before getting into this video. Before I say anything, I don't want people watching this and feeling sorry for me, and I know some people might question why I'm uploading videos like this, and to be honest, it's for myself mentally, to help myself. I always feel a wave of relief wash over me when I make these videos. And yeah, I do. When it comes to posting them, I kind of second guess myself and I go, do I really need to put this out? But do you know what? I want to do it. I want to be a voice for someone that's going through similar issues or has been through similar issues, and show people, almost like set an example that you can get through it and it gets better. And I'm not completely fine, I wouldn't say. I suffer a lot with my anxiety because of all the things I'm about to talk about, but I am a stronger, better and bolder person because all of the shit that I shouldn't have been put through but was, unfortunately. And although my mental health, what I'm dealing with now, is not my fault, it is my responsibility. And for anyone that's watching this, if you've been put through similar situations or you're dealing with similar situations, when mental health is suffering as a reaction to actions from other people, yes, it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility, and you need to take care of yourself. And just everything I say, I don't want to trigger people, so also another disclaimer. I'll be touching on addiction, alcoholism, mental and physical abuse, emotional manipulation, eating disorders. Like, there's a lot in this. It's a long video, so you know, if it's too much already from the get-go of the subjects I'm going to talk about, don't watch it. If it's too much, it's completely fine. I just want to let people know before watching it that it could trigger some people. It could be hard for some people to watch it and to listen to. But because I've said all that, like I said, I am a stronger person because of all of this. I don't hold grudges. To one person in the story I do, and you'll figure that out very quickly. I don't want to be looked at as someone who people feel like they have to feel sorry for, or I'm not a victim. I'm not broken. I obviously have anxiety that is my responsibility to look after and heal from, and definitely emotional trauma that I'm still dealing with, but I'm healing with too. So just all those disclaimers before I get into this video. I filmed it about half an hour ago. I've taken a massive breather. You know, I kind of had to sit down with myself and kind of said to myself, is this really something you want to upload? Is this really something you want people to know? You know what? I want to put this out in the open. And I say it in the video, I wish the voice I have now was a voice that was around for me when I was younger and going through everything that I speak about now. But like I said, I'm absolutely not a victim of anything. I am a stronger person. And essentially, for the most part, I'm really proud of myself for coming out on the other side and for putting up videos, raising awareness about mental health, for trying to break the stigma. I've gone through anything similar to this situation and say, I'm better than this situation, I can get through this, and I'm absolutely going to come out on the other side, and I'm going to work on myself to do that. So yeah, it's a heavy video, just stick with it. I know it's a lot to talk about. It's hard for me in a way to put it out there because only close friends and family know about this, but for me, I feel like putting it out there is like a release. But yeah, just this is the video, and please, just if it gets to a point where it's too much, don't watch it. If you're already kind of going, no, I don't know if this is going to be too heavy for me, you don't have to watch it. But yeah, that's my little disclaimer. So I'll get into the video. I started my channel just over a year ago, and you know, literally my 4th video in was a big discussion about mental health. Realistically, the main reason I decided to talk openly about mental health is because I wish I had the voice I have now when I was younger, that was telling me it was okay and telling me that there was nothing wrong with me, and that not that it's exactly normal or, you know, okay to feel down about yourself or to have these problems, but at the same time I kind of wish I had the Lauren that is me now. I wish I had her back then when I was younger, being the voice of reason and the voice of it's okay, like you're not alone and this happens to people sometimes. I was sitting in my bed and literally I was about to play Sims, and I thought to myself, I'm in a better place than I was. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm definitely in a better place mentally than I was a couple of months ago, and definitely a couple of years ago. Every time I sit down to talk about mental health, I find that like my chest gets really tight and I get really like breathless, and I don't know why. Basically, I wanted to go through my mental health story. I know I've spoken about it on my channel previously. So for me, I think I was 11 or 12 and my mum was going through a separation. She was married to, I call him my stepdad, but he's not really, but he is. And through all those stressful situations, my mum started drinking, and essentially she was an alcoholic. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. My mum had a lot of issues when it came to depression, and she was, you know, she was given sleeping tablets, which you're not supposed to mix with alcohol. But it became an issue from the age of about 12, I'd say, up until I was 18 years old, where alcohol was the answer to all the problems. And I became the parent in the house. I missed school days because my mum just couldn't look after herself. But I know there is a part of me that wishes more was done in this particular situation. Alcoholism, it's a disease. You're addicted. You can't help yourself. Like, it's the same as going up to someone who's addicted to heroin and saying, just stop. Like, it's not going to happen overnight. It's a process, and the person who has the addiction is the person that has to be the first to say, okay, I want to get help. You pouring drinks down the sink and fighting with them and telling them that they're good for nothing is not going to fix it. In fact, it's going to make it worse, because they're going to rebel against you. And trust me on this one, I know. But then it got worse because my mum met this particular human being. This is a person who hate doesn't even justify the feeling I have towards them. I'm still very angry. So no matter what I say in this, by the way, I absolutely adore my mum. She, you know, sometimes life gets too much for people and they can't handle it, and, you know, they find something that they think is going to temporarily wash away the depression, but my mum got into a relationship with this guy. Being fucking, how old is I? I think it was 14, 15. I was living by myself with my mum, I think from the age of 13 or 14. And it was that way up until she passed away when I turned 18. If you watched my previous video, you know this already, but I would love to just name and shame, I really would, but I'm fighting it back. You get very protective of your parents, especially when I knew my mum wasn't well, not coping very well with a lot of things in her life, and it was clear as day that the last thing she needed was a drinking buddy, which is basically what this person was. This guy started coming over to our house. I just didn't like him from the get-go, and a lot of people were saying to me, oh, it's new, like obviously you don't want to see like your mum with somebody else, but I think I kind of could sense that something was wrong with this guy, and because my mom obviously wasn't well, I think for her it was a rock. It was something for her to lean on, and maybe in a way she thought she was having this new support, and that this person was showing her love that she hadn't felt in a while maybe, and it was just so wrong. It was so wrong. So this guy, he was just weird. I remember waking up in the middle of the night, I could hear like a loud banging noise. So I came out and he was in the kitchen and he had a teaspoon in his hand and he was like jabbing a piece of bread. And I think I was like half asleep, but I was like, what are you doing? And he just turned and looked at me, and he wasn't there. I don't know, to this day I don't know if he was on drugs. He had to be, but he just looked at me blankly. Like, I don't even think he looked straight at me. He was looking over my head. Like, I don't think he had that mental capacity to actually be like, oh, a person, let me focus on you. But he just looked at me and was like, huh. So I was like, okay. So I went back to bed, and I think I told my mom the next morning. I went in and I was like, what were you doing last night? Well, we need to give him a name. What's a really shit name? Let's just call him Irrelevant, because that's exactly what he is. So I said to Irrelevant, like, what were you doing last night? And he played dumb. He actually had no clue what I was talking about. Like, it just didn't register in his head. He was really confused. And my mum was like, what are you talking about, Lauren? And I was like, oh, well, I woke up last night and Irrelevant over here was like stabbing a piece of bread with a teaspoon. And I remember my mom, like, she looked at him, but she started laughing. The two of them thought it was funny. And he called me a rat. I think I was 15 years old and he was like 30s, I want to say. Early 30s. Yeah, I think so. So that kind of frustrated me then, that it was just laughed off, because to me it was very strange. We didn't have a lot of money, but he was showing up in taxis, and I would see my mom going outside with her purse, and she would be paying for them. He would stay here She would be cooking food for the two of them. He'd stay for nights on end, and I just noticed that every time he was over, my mom was like paraplegic drunk. Like, it wasn't drunk where you're like, oh shit, like you need to go to bed. It was drunk like, do you need me to call an ambulance? Like, it was awful. And it was almost like she was his puppet. You know, I didn't actually realize that he had a problem with alcohol until a little bit later. I think I kind of had an idea something was up, but I didn't know it was alcohol until he had a little flask thing, but I don't know what they're called, those kind of little, you know what I'm talking about. And he would actually hide it in the jacket, in the pocket of his jacket, and would swig like pure vodka from it. And you know, you could always smell it off his breath. He just, the way, I don't know how to explain this, but the way he went on, it was just very obvious that he had serious issues. And like I said, I want to be able to be very compassionate and understanding about other people's mental health issues, but I just do not feel any type of way towards this person other than angry. And it's something I just so whatever, every time he was over, I just noticed that my mom had a drinking buddy essentially, and he wasn't even nice to my mum. I remember it was like emotional abuse, and he was so manipulative, and he would try and start fights between me and my mum, and I kind of wanted to run away because it was like, I don't want to be in a house with these people where they're just getting pissed drunk all the time. The way he acted in the house as well, it was as if it was his house and he owned it and he made the rules, which bothered me. Just, oh my God. Okay, so I'm just gonna get to the serious bits. There were small things in between. So when I was around the age of 15 too, this is something I'm not very open about, and I think it's mainly because I'm not very well educated in it. I know the basics, but I'm not fully like understanding of it, and I suppose I need to educate myself a bit more on this topic. But looking back now, I think 15-year-old Lauren had an eating disorder. So I would go to school and not bring a lunch with me or money for lunch, and I'm sure people from my school will remember when lunchtime came, I would actually be so hungry, but I wouldn't bring anything for myself to eat, and I used to ask people like, have you got any food, like I'm kind of hungry. And I wouldn't really eat except for after school. One of my friends had a bus pass, and I didn't have to pay for the bus if I was with her as a companion. So with my bus fare, I would buy like a packet of biscuits and I would eat that, and that would kind of be all I'd really eat. But it went on for a couple of years. Like when I look back on photos of myself at that age, I was very small, but I didn't realize that it was an issue. I just thought I wasn't hungry, or I don't know, it never really crossed my mind when I was that age that it was an issue, and I didn't really tell anybody. Like, I just didn't think it was a problem, but looking back on it now, it absolutely was. I wouldn't starve myself essentially, but I just wouldn't give my body the food and the nutrients and shit that it needed, especially at that young age, you know? Like, I just wasn't really eating. But I was very self-conscious. I've never been fully comfortable with my weight. I've always kind of battled with it. But at that age specifically, I remember being so hard on myself for my weight, and you know, I would just be looking at my friends and their figures, and they'd come out in shorts, and for me it was like such a big deal to come out in a pair of shorts, or to come out in a skirt I wasn't wearing black tights with, like, a black made you look slimmer, so I'm going to wear loads of black. But I tortured myself mentally with it, and I wouldn't allow myself to wear clothes that I liked because I thought I looked too big in them. And back then I was very slim. I was pretty small. Jesus. Woohoo. Either way, this is gonna make sense in a minute, but I had, you know, very, very hard on myself in terms of my weight, and I don't think I actually realized how small I was back then until literally only a few weeks ago. I was looking back on photos of myself when I was younger, and I was like, Jesus, like, that's me. I was so small. I was tiny. I was struggling, thinking that I was huge, and thinking that I was disgusting, and that I couldn't wear dresses or tight-fitting clothes. Like, I would always wear jeans and like a baggy hoodie and stuff like that, and I don't know, looking back on it now, it was definitely an issue. But anyways, so, you know, I was struggling a lot with my weight. I was beating myself up about how I looked and how I felt like I looked, and how other people looked if I compared myself to them. I used to go into school and ask people like, do you think I'm skinny, or do you think I'm this, blah blah blah, and I just wasn't good to myself. And I remember I don't know if he knew that, but there eventually came a time where he started commenting on me and my eating habits. Now bear in mind, like I said, I did not eat a whole lot. My mum didn't really make dinner. Like if I came home from school, maybe I'd make a sandwich, but I was never eating proper meals. It was always like kind of little snacks here and there, and I didn't feel hungry. I don't remember feeling hungry, but I remember at one stage he turned around to me, and I'm pretty sure this was in front of a group of friends. So I had a group of friends over at my house. We were playing the Wii, and he just appeared. He was supposed to be out with my mum, but he actually came back to the house drunk by himself and forced his way in, might I add. He wasn't actually invited into the house. I saw him at the door, and I rang my mum and said that he was there, and she said, well, he's not supposed to be, like he just disappeared on me. We were out for a meal, so can you tell him to come back? He wouldn't listen to me. He like forced his way into the apartment, and my friends kind of knew that he made me uncomfortable and that I didn't like him, and you know, as my friends, they felt uncomfortable. You could see the shift. We went from all laughing and messing around and playing the Wii to everyone kind of went quiet and just stopped talking when he came in, and he made himself known. He like stared at everybody, sat down on the couch with my friends and just stared at them and didn't say anything. And I said something like, you're not supposed to be here. It was my house. I didn't want him there. And he started commenting on my weight then. I can't remember exactly what he said, but he was looking at me. This grown man was looking at me up and down and was saying, you really need to watch your figure. I think you're eating too much. Comments like that. And I remember one of my friends actually started filming it. And so yeah, my friend started filming it, and Irrelevant didn't notice. But there was 4 people sitting on that couch, and each and every one of them stayed quiet, and you could see they were like moving away from him. And he just kept making comments about my body and comments about me as a person, and just being really condescending and manipulative and horrible to me. And eventually I think I picked up the phone. I'd had enough of the emotional abuse, and I rang my mum and I said, he's not leaving the house, and he's literally sitting with my friends and making everybody uncomfortable. I want him to leave. And he walked over to me. I was in the kitchen area, so he walks over and I've got the phone to my ear, and he said, let me talk to her. And she literally said, I don't want to speak to him, tell him to get out of the house. And she hung up. But as she hung up, he went to grab the phone, and he actually grabbed my hair, and he pulled me down to the ground. And whatever noise I made, I must have screamed, I must have done something, but everyone came running over. Now bear in mind, this is a group of 14, 15-year-old kids, and all of them ran over, and one of them at the time was my boyfriend, and I was just bawling my eyes out crying, and they didn't know what happened. They just heard me scream and then caught me on the ground, and he just walked away as if nothing happened. And my little boyfriend at the time took my phone and rang my mum and said, Sarah, like he just hit Lauren, like I didn't hear what my mum said on the phone. I was in floods of tears, and everybody was really shaken up over it. We were all cornered in the kitchen hiding from him while he fell asleep on the couch. So that happened, and I remember my mom came home and she kicked him out. She actually physically started kicking his legs. He had passed out on the couch after it happened, and she was kicking his legs and saying, get out of my house, don't you dare put your hands on my daughter. If you don't leave now, I'm going to call the police. Essentially, she should have called the police, but let me get to it. He woke up and basically had a standoff with all of my friends who were 14 years old at the time. Had a standoff with my friends, like stood there and came over and like stood in front of some, and okay, I think it was three guys and one girl, I can't remember, but the majority was boys, and stood in front of them and stared them down and laughed in their faces. And when my mom said, did you put your hands on my daughter, he started laughing, and he was like, would anybody want to do that? Who would want to do that? Making me look stupid and just being an asshole. And actually, we got him out of the house, and my mum just said to me, I'm done, he's not coming back, we're never going to see him again. I thought, it gets worse, hold on. That happened. A couple of weeks went by, I didn't hear from him, and I just started to feel so good. I was like, finally he's gone. I hated him so much. I knew he had issues with alcohol, and you know, I am a very forgiving person, and I try to be as understanding as possible, but with him there was just no sympathy, there was no empathy, there was no nothing. I just felt numb towards this man, and I was like, I don't care, don't bring your issues into my house, get out. And like I said, I was the parent in the house at this time. One day I was in the sitting room, and where our sitting room was in the apartment, there was a big massive window that led out onto the main road, and a car pulls up and parks in our apartment, and I can kind of see, and I'm like, who's that? And Irrelevant gets out of the car with his dad. Oh yeah, he lived with his parents, by the way. I remember he started walking up the pathway towards the house, and I was like, no, hell no, this man is not coming into this house again, not a chance. And his dad, who I don't think I've ever properly had I don't think I've ever met him before, I just knew it was his dad from photos and stuff. I opened the window and I didn't even speak to him, I spoke to his dad, and I said, he's not coming into my house, he's not coming into this house, not a chance, please take him home. I started begging this grown man. I was 15 years old with the window open, begging this grown man who I had never met before, do not let your son into this house, please. Irrelevant turned around to his dad and went, do you see what I have to deal with? Ooh, I can feel the rage. His dad just looked at me blankly as if I was crazy. His dad didn't even acknowledge it. I'm sorry, if I, even now at 23 years old, if I was coming to someone's house, if I was dropping a friend off and a child was out the window saying, please don't let them in, I would question it. I would want to know what the fuck was going on. But he looked at me like I was crazy, and my mom let Irrelevant into the house. I threw an absolute fit. I remember I went into my room, and I think at the time I didn't realize that I was suffering with anxiety, and I think it took me a few years to even acknowledge that I had anxiety. I thought there was an age limit. I thought it was stupid for a young person to have anxiety. I don't know how to explain it. I just remember thinking, I'm too young, that can't happen. But I remember going into my room and I trashed my room. I was so upset, and I remember my mom coming in and asked me, what are you doing? Like, why are you getting so angry? And he was in the background. Ignore her, she's just looking for attention. Once he came back, he was like a fucking leech. He just stayed, wouldn't leave, just would not even try to be like, not even try and talk to me or build a relationship with me. In his eyes, I was the enemy, and I was stopping him from having fun, whereas I was just protecting my mom and myself. He came back, and I don't remember how long it lasted, but I would run away from home a lot. I'd stay in people's houses. I didn't want to be at home. The guards had to be called on multiple occasions because I said to my mum, if he comes into the door, I'm just going to ring the guards and I'm going to say, we have a trespasser, I'm 15 years old, I'm not comfortable with this man in my house. And even when the guards said to my mum, they were like, okay, the only way we can resolve this is either you kick your daughter out or you kick him out. At one stage she did say, let Lauren leave. Because I don't know if he had ever laid his hands on my mom, but I wouldn't put it past him after what he did to me at 15 years old in front of a group of people. Whatever the guards have been called, I think my mum actually did say that she wanted me to leave, and there was a female guard that actually turned around to my mum, and whatever way she looked at her, I don't know what she said to her, but my mum said, okay, you need to leave, to Irrelevant. And so he put up a little bit of a fight. He didn't want to leave, and the guard said, look, we're going to remove you by force if you don't get out of this house because it's not your home. So he left. He left, and he got arrested a few hours later because he attacked somebody on the street for no reason. Like, he's just serious issues. But yeah, then there was a stage after the guards had been called the second time where my mum went, okay, done, he's never coming back. But I knew it was going to be like, it was like a proper addiction. It was like she was going through the stage of, okay, I'm going to get better, I'm going to do this, but then she'd relapse and he'd come back into her life. So there was one night in particular that I remember when they hadn't been speaking, and she actually came into my room, and I think it was like 1 in the morning or something, and she just said to me, keep all the lights off. I'm gonna sleep in your room tonight. I was like, okay, because I had already been sleeping. And the way our apartment was the apartments on our road had a shared garden, so you needed a code for the gate and then you could go into the garden. And he jumped over that gate. and he was knocking on my window because we were on the bottom floor. He was knocking on my window, he was knocking on my mom's window, he was ringing the doorbell. We could hear him like cursing and complaining, and he didn't have money for the taxi that he came up in either, so that was the problem too. I don't know what happened. He was knocking on the doors and ringing the bell for about half an hour, and then he gave up and he left, and I don't know where he went, but he was gone, so I didn't care. That night, sitting on my bed with my mom, and the two of us were literally cuddling each other, and my mom was scared. This is a very long story, I know. I'm gonna get to the end of it. Yeah, he kind of came and went as he pleased, used my mom's money to buy more drink, drank with her, got drunk with her. He also used to steal money out of my room. My dad or my nanny used to give me money whenever I went down to Wicklow, and I used to hide it in my CD player. I used, like, the part where you open up to put the CD in, I would hide all the money in there and put a CD over it so you couldn't tell. And the amount of times I came home and it was gone. There was also certain nights where I'd be asleep and I'd wake up and he'd be standing at the end of my bed. And he would just stare at me. He wouldn't say anything, he'd just stare at me. And I don't know, it felt like it went on for a long time, but I feel like it was a really short period of time. But because I was scared and confused and half asleep, I was like, what the fuck is going on? And he would leave. Or I'd wake up and my bedroom door would have just closed over, so he was in my room before that. I didn't realise up until recently in my life that this man was also calling my dad, and I'm not going to get into the details. I'm sure people have an idea of what I'm going to say. He would ring my dad, who was miles away, and say, I'm standing at your daughter's bed and I'm going to do something. Yeah, he would ring my dad off my mum's phone when my mum was asleep, and he would actually, I didn't know this had happened. I do know I had woken up previously to him standing in my room, or I've just walked out of my room. But I remember my dad only told me this recently. I knew that Irrelevant had rang my dad before and antagonized him and tried to threaten my dad and stuff. My dad's a bull when he's angry, so nothing was gonna happen there. Like, stand at the end of my bed and ring my dad and say, I'm going to get into the bed with your daughter. That's still something I'm processing because I didn't actually know of that until recently. I knew he had rang my dad, I didn't know he was making threats like that. All I know is my dad showed up while I was sleeping one night with my uncle and basically told Irrelevant that if the guards didn't get there before my dad would be going to jail for a very long time. And when he got there, he was gone. And that happened a few times when I was sleeping. My dad would actually be outside the house and I had no clue. Eventually they finished up and we never saw him again. Didn't see him, he just disappeared. I don't remember if there was an argument, I don't remember what happened, but the guards had been involved so many times. His sister had actually set my mum up with him, and his sister texted my mum after they broke up saying, I'm so sorry, I should have told you that he was an alcoholic. Now, I don't want to put the blame on people or be an asshole. Actually, do you know what? I have every right to be an asshole. I'm angry. Why would you text this woman who's just come out of a separation, who is a single mother living alone with a young child, and say, here's an idea, go out with my brother? But when they did break up, it was good. She was still not well, she was still drinking, but she didn't have someone enabling her and pressuring her and pushing her and manipulating her and stressing her out. You know, she had me, and it was hard. It was very fucking hard for me to try and look after her by myself when she wasn't well and when she was taking sleeping tablets with alcohol. And I really believe he pushed her to that point, but she was sick. She was in and out of the hospital. She was missing work days. Either way, he disappeared from our life one day. I haven't heard of that man since. At my mum's funeral, my dad and my stepdad stood guard and made sure that he didn't show up. I'm proud of myself for getting through that period in my life because it was so hard. That man used to mock me when I had panic attacks. He would stand in my room and laugh in my face and mimic me when I was hyperventilating, when I was crying, when I was like pulling my hair. He would copy me and he'd laugh at me. and I feel a lot of my panic attacks, when I have them, they come out in anger, and I fully believe that that man is responsible for the way I respond to stressful situations and feeling cornered and feeling afraid. And one day I will absolutely name and shame him. And one day maybe he's already gotten the karma he deserves, but I don't think karma could hit that man hard enough. And really, I am a very compassionate person. I try to be as understanding as possible, but I feel nothing towards him except for anger. That was my childhood that got ruined because of somebody else wanting to have a drinking buddy. Someone else who was mentally unstable and had a child. And he fucked it. The main reason I made this video was just, I think I needed to vent, but also I wanted to kind of explain myself where my anxiety comes from, and that I understand where it comes from, and that I'm dealing with it, and that I'm in a much better place emotionally, and I'm thankful that I've made it this far, and that I can be a playful, funny, happy person and live my life knowing that, yeah, you've been through the shits, but look at you now. And I think that that's what's important when you're watching this video. I think people have seen me physically come out on the other side throughout my videos. I think I'm a strong person, and I think I shouldn't have had to go through any of that, but it made me the person I am today. I have my own place now with 2 new really great friends, and I am happy out. And life, when it gets to the stage where it really feels like nothing's gonna change and like you're in the shit, I will never ever let someone come into my life and treat me like that, and I will never allow somebody to come into my life to control it the way that man did, and to upset me to the point that I developed anxiety and depression and had to deal with panic attacks to this very day. And all I have to say to that is that I'm a stronger person because of it,